Greetings. I am Dr. Noni Davis, coming to you from Sya Academy here in North Carolina. Um, I am the legacy owner, co-founder of Sya Academy with my parents, William Edward Davis, the late William Edward Davis, and my mother, Sylvia Davis. Um, and we have been here for almost 30 years. This will be our 30th year of celebrating African centered education, teaching our youngins to know who they are and elevate themselves and understand what their purpose is on this here planet. Um, and what are they here to do? So, um, today I wanted to celebrate Hoodoo Heritage Month. Hoodoo. So, I'm going to talk about hoodoo, of course, through an academic lens and the differences between hoodoo, voodoo, and vodou. And so here it is. What is Hoodoo Heritage Month? And so Hoodoo Heritage Month was coined by Mama Roo and the Dekanga Collective of Chicago, Illinois. Hoodoo Heritage Month is observed yearly during the month of October. The month long celebration is complete with hoodoo holy days, calendars of suggested activities, and community events to celebrate the lineage of the hoodoo religion, its history, and its contemporary practitioners. And so I believe this started in this hoodoo. Heritage Month started in 2017 because it says 2017 to 2024, all white rights reserved. And so many people do know, have heard the term hoodoo, but we don't really know what it is. A lot of us don't. But what's interesting is that most of our ancestors practiced some form of it. Um, I was watching a video just today about where a woman was explaining how just who practiced, she's a hoodoo or conjure woman or whatever, said that it would be an example would be your grandmother preparing chicken soup for you and collecting the herbs and the garlic and the onions from the yard, the greens and everything she's grown in her garden, and making this soup for you and praying over that soup, and that soup would be a healing for you. um, and that would be an example of hoodoo, just conjuring and praying for you. And um, and so, like I said, I want to be clear that this is just an academic. I'm not hoodoo is not a religion. It's mostly a practice. And so, um, I want to start. So, according to Professor Chiro's Academic Hoodoo, this is a website on the internet. Hoodoo can be in many things. It can be a spiritual practice, a healing tradition, an art form, or a magical practice. Um, Hoodoo in general is a tradition that evolved among African Americans. So our version is hoodoo in this country, and it started. They said the 1800s, the late 1700s, the 1800s, but it it evolved from our African spiritual practices on the continent. And of course, when Africans were picked up, you have to remember, they picked up the Mende, and then they picked up some Fulani, and they picked up some Wolof people, and some Temna people, and maybe they were going across. They picked up some people from the Akan or the Afanti, or as they were moving further along, they picked up some folks from Benin, the Igbo, and the Yoruba, and then as they went down towards Angola, they picked up some Congolese, and they picked up some folks from Angola, the Gola people. And so just imagine that there was this conflation of all of these um, different indigenous practices among Africans, the names of the gods, the spiritual practices that they had. And you have these people on these ships, unable to speak to each other because they're speaking these, different dialects. But when they're forced on this boat, now they're having to learn what these white demonic enslavers are saying to them, and they're having so if it's in French, is it in Spanish, is it in English, is it in Portuguese, whatever that language was, they had to figure out real quickly what these people were saying, and so they started developing, Creole. And once they began to be able to converse with each other, they began to also share their own spiritual practices. And the only thing that may have been consistent was the veneration of ancestors. They all believed in God. We know our ancestors believed in God. They practiced their own. They had a name for God, be it Chukwu or Oludumare or whatever. That word meant God, and so we don't have to say it has to be in English. They had their own words for the Creator, and so but they had to but they may have done, somebody may have had a little bit of an Islamic bent to their practice. So they believed in it. They prayed where the sun was rising, the sun was setting, the directions. They may have, someone may have been, if they lived along the coastline, they may have been more veneration of water. If they lived along the rivers, veneration of rivers. If they lived in the mountains, the veneration of mountains and mountain type spirits. And so they had to, they did not, the only thing they had when they got on those ships was their spiritual practices. That was it, because they were stripped of language, stripped of their clothing, stripped of their dignity and their humanity, or at least that's what the intention was. But they still determined through their own determination, those who survived, and they said it was only one third of the Africans. So when we say 12 million were brought here, that means that there were actually 36 million, and 24 million probably were the ones that died. And we are the descendants. Those of us who are in Americas right now are the descendants of those who had what it took to survive that horrific, demonic, barbaric treatment by these people. So they had to forge new identity among themselves. They were the Fan, the Fula, the Yoruba, the Mende, the Temne, the Kru, Congo, Mandinke, Wolof, Akan, Asante, and so many different tribes and so many languages and so many different spiritual practices. And so they took that American English, or that French, or that Spanish or whatever, and created their own patois or their own Creole, taking that or broken English, as they would say, and then they put that what is it, that rhythm and cadence of the African tongue on it. And so they turned that language and they made it into their own. And they blended their spiritual practices into something new. They're on this in this country. They in Africa, they were practicing their own medicinal knowledge, their own medical knowledge, their own pharmaceutical knowledge, herbal knowledge. And over here, they had to say, "Oh, wait, what plants do we use for this?" And so they had to rely on the indigenous people to share their understanding. This is what we do here. So that spiritual knowledge from indigenous people, the Native Americans, and their knowledge here. And then they had to deal with these Europeans, so they had to take some of the stuff from them too. Some of it, maybe, they had this Bible, and so they said, okay, well, we're going to take, we know that you all don't believe in the Bible, because why would you create a slave Bible if you really thought your Bible was so holy and sanctified? Then you would not have corrupted it by changing it and giving it to somebody else. You made me think you were doing a whole lot of nonsense if you can actually do that to your holy book. And so anyway, we know that they changed it, but our ancestors, in spite of them changing it, took the scriptures that they could and turned them into spells, turned them into, um, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. What is another one? No weapon formed against me shall prosper, and every tongue that rises up against me shall be brought down low. We turn those into to protection. We got the knowledge of the plants, like I said, and we like, okay, we did this way here. Let's see, how do we do this? Use this plant that we now have here. Does that have the same quality? Does it do the same? Will it work the same way in our body? um and we needed to do that because we need to be able to heal ourselves in those cabins. We needed to protect ourselves from these folks, and a lot of times they don't want to tell you about all the ways that we took care of ourselves and protected ourselves. And one of the reasons why the plantation owners were so alarmed is because they knew that this stuff was working. um, Folks were doing whatever they had to do. There was a whole lot of death going on in them plantations. These plantation owners, they don't want you to know the stories, but we were doing what we needed to do um, to these people to protect ourselves. And so, yes, there was violence committed against us, but we were also repaying violence and all this turn the other cheek stuff. No, we were not. A lot of us were not doing that. And so that's the reason why they were forcing us to practice Christianity. It's taking all these slave Bible terms and, serving your master. They took out Moses because they didn't want us. And we still found about Moses and then made a whole song about Moses. Go down Moses, way down in Egypt land. And the Go Down Moses was actually banned. It was a book. I didn't know that it was illegal to sing that song. Hilarious. But like I said, our ancestors were determined to find a way to survive in this land under the evil empire by using natural and supernatural elements in order to create and affect change in the human experience, according to Professor Shiro. Now, my first awareness of hoodoo in my family was when my parents would share stories of their grandparents. And so, according to my dad, my grandma Alula Barham Davis could go tell you what plant to go out and find in the yard. And it could be lavender, it may have been cascarilla, I'm not sure. But she said if you bring that here, and she would use it to make a tea for her stomach aches or for her anxiety or whatever. And so I was like, oh, and so that's the healing art. And then my other grandmother, Cora Rogers, Cordine Rogers was, and I think she was in the spiritual stuff. And so my mom remembers her doing things that were like, whoa. She couldn't tell you exactly what it was, but she said they knew that she was doing, things like working with Ouija boards and, all kinds of spiritual stuff in her house too. And so my family, my great grandmothers were definitely practicing this, and the healing arts, and the other one was on the magical stuff, dipping in that kind of thing. And so and now, because Europeans, like I said, were so violent and wanted to suppress this indigenous and African spiritual practices, they wanted to enforce, like I said, this Eurocentric Christian worldview with these slave Bibles. But I speculate that the reason why hoodoo was used, what they had to do is they had to take it undercover. So they had to practice it in secret. And so in my personal celebration of hoodoo month, I made this I crafted this from different types of papers or whatever, but they would have to meet in secret places. And they would play their drums, they would play their tambourines and their get banjos or whatever, and had their little fire going, and hoot and holler in the middle of the night, deep, deep, deep in the woods. And so this is my hoodoo honor celebration of hoodoo hoodoo month. But it the thing what hoodoo was not was this very strict practice. It's not really considered a religion. It's more of, like I said, a spiritual practice. And it is it doesn't have really any tenets. It is more about how you are feeling spiritually in your walk on this planet and with nature. So it's mostly about cosmic order, such as Ma'at. So but Ma'at is an ancient Kemetic Egyptian practice of, and the virtues are harmony and balance, justice and order, truth and righteousness, reciprocity and prosperity. And so that is kind of what the point of hoodoo was. It was to maintain this sacred relationship with the earth and with the creator. They believe that in superhuman powers. So you've got your ancestral space. You have people believe in guardian angels. You believe in signs like, uh, my uh, my son had a peacock showed up in my yard the day he transitioned, and we considered that to be like an omen because I don't live around peacocks, and I've been living in my house for almost 30 years. And if I include my mama's house on this street, we've been here for about 50 years, and we have never seen a peacock before. And so that showed up the morning that of his transition. And so we know that there are these different signs and these different unusual circumstances that we or experiences that we have that we believe are related to, spirit is trying to tell us something or reveal something to us. And you have the ancestral plane, you have the angels, and you have the orishas, forces of nature, forces and power that are going on, that we can't always see. And so it's a spiritual practice originated with enslaved Africans, but encompasses traditions from, like I said, the Native Americans, the Africans, the Europeans. It pulls in the Christianity, Islam, and Asian influences as well. There is no pope, there's no imam, there's no high priest, or any kind of religious dignitary. But how is that different from voodoo? Is hoodoo, you have voodoo and vodou. And so voodoo um, is an organized religious practice that is based on African spirituality. So hoodoo is based on African spirituality, but voodoo is closer to to Ifa or Yoruba. Um, the word voodoo comes from the Fangbe language of people from Benin, Togo, and Nigeria, and their religious beliefs or practices of these people emerged as a compilation of their beliefs on plantations in the Caribbean and the Americas. Now, voodoo is mostly practiced in Louisiana. And they said that voodoo started in the at like the 1800s, the late 1700s, and the early 1800s. But I want to go back to voodoo, and then I'll come back out voodoo, VODOU, and go back to voodoo, which is VOODOO. Vodou is Haitian. Uh, this one started, they said, like the 1600s, 1500s. I think it's 1500s to the present. And we have to remember those islands were the first places colonized. It was the French and the Spanish, no, Portuguese, the Spanish, and then the French. And so all of the Caribbean, a lot of the reason why they're speaking French is because France was in this thing first. England didn't join in until much later. So, and they had to cloak it under Catholicism. So you had this Catholic religion, and you had Vodou, which was considered to be this demonic spiritual system, but it's a trip, So you've got these saints, and then we have the Orishas, and then we have Olodumare, and then they have God, and then we have Olorun, and they have Jesus. So it's like very close in its in the way it was structured, which is the reason why I think a lot of Africans became Catholic, because they could see the overlaps. So, for example, you would have Yemanja, however you want to say her name, but she is the Orisha of the sea. She's of motherhood, of fertility, and then she is associated with the Catholic Saint Our Lady of Regla, the Virgin Mary, or Virgin of the Sea. And both of them are wearing blue. And I don't think, do I have Yemenya? I don't think I have Yemenya. Let me see if I can pull up a picture of Yemenya for you. Yemenya. Yemenya. Oh, wait, no, not that one. Yeah. Goddess images. So this is Yemen, yeah. And she's also considered to be like a mermaid in some places. And then you have Mama Wata also. And so then you have oh, I don't know. Do I want to pull up the saint? Let's see, Virgin Mary. Mary. Saint Virgin Mary. And as you can see, she's also wearing blue. Okay. And so then you have Ogun. And an example of Ogun, and we know Ogun is a warrior. He symbolizes war, iron, technology in the Ifa tradition. But then you have Saint James. Saint James. The Catholic Church. And St. James was also James the Great. He is supposed to be associated with pilgrims, pharmacists, and soldiers. So both of them are related to war. But he's wearing red. I don't know why the colors don't match, but because I think Ogun is green or whatever. But anyway, so the spiritual practice also include a belief in providing offerings of food, fruit, liquor, and sacrifice animals. Um, the thing that you see in a lot of the Holy Ghost Pentecostal churches of people getting caught up in the spirit as they start playing the music and speaking in tongues. Well, in Vodou, that's what they use their music for too. So while we're catching the Holy Ghost in Africa or in our traditional practices, that's exactly what was going on when they were playing these drums. They would have encouraged the spirit to possess a believer, and these instruments included the drums and the tambourines and the shekres and the bells, and singing and dancing and calling people up, conjuring up this energy. Conjuring meaning that you're requesting someone to come, you're invoking someone's name, you're asking for help. And so this is something that we were doing that is an African tradition that we still see in a lot of the Pentecostal churches. And so in Haiti, it was, under the guise of, cloaked by the Catholic Church, but in our current practice, or in Africa, it was just Ifa, or it was whatever the other African traditions, which are all ancestral, all have an ancestral um, an ancestral practice, revering ancestors. So now voodoo is a centralized in New Orleans, Louisiana, and this is Voodoo. And Africans who were brought to that area also a lot of them were brought in from Haiti. and they were brought in from Haiti because Haiti was going through that revolution. I think that they got their freedom in 1802. So in the late 1700s, you had this war going on in Haiti, and you had a lot of disruption on the other Caribbean islands in that area too. So the what happened is that the way that America got Louisiana, that whole territory, was because, um, you know, Thomas pedophile Jefferson, he was a pedophile because he had a 14-year-old girl named Sally Hemings that he got pregnant. He took that black girl to France so he could, anyway. And so she ended up having a baby with this 40-year-old pedophile. Oh, sounds like American history. Anyway, so Thomas pedophile Jefferson uh, had an opportunity to buy the Louisiana area from uh, Napoleon, because Napoleon had bankrupted France. And so with this war, he thought he was going to just walk in there and just do it. And it didn't happen. Oh, wait a minute. What's going on? Okay, wait. All right. So, um, my screen. So, this was the Louisiana Purchase. So, I want you to just see how I just need that picture. So, America went from the West Coast, and so expanded to Montana. You see North Dakota, Minnesota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Nebraska, Iowa, Colorado, Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, part of New Mexico, what is now New Mexico, a part of Texas and Louisiana. And so they got the Gulf of Mexico, not anything else, but the Gulf of Mexico all the way through Canada. And so it doubled the size of the United States, but that was all because of Toussaint Louverture and Dessalines, Jean Dessalines. And dude lost. So anyway, so voodoo was brought to that Louisiana area, and expanded and broadened, and became one of the primary spiritual practices in that area. But it was because of some of it I would attribute to the Haitians. And so there's a video that if you want to watch more about, it's called "Uncovering the Power of Hoodoo: An Ancestral Journey" by Tariana Tank Ball, and it's a PBS, so it's public broadcasting service. About 13-minute video with a Dr. Kamala Martin, and she is sharing how our ancestors used voodoo or use hoodoo here. In Brazil, it was candomblé. In Cuba, it became Santeria. But all of these were used to help us survive the Middle Passage, to survive the genocide, to survive enslavement, to survive rape and murder and dehumanization. And we use these spiritual systems, these spiritual pathways, to elevate our ancestors who persevered and overcame with love, passion, persistence, honor, wisdom, suffering, overcoming tragedy. They had their own foolishness, they had their insanity that they were dealing with, but they had joy in the midst of some of this stuff, and all of their full humanity. They came through this thing in their full humanity, and it helped them to overcome their enslavement. And we are here today because our ancestors practiced their indigenous veneration of their ancestors. They worship their ancestors. They venerated their own ancestors, and we need to venerate ours, because look at us. Black women are the most educated people in this country. White men are the least educated population in this country right now. We are, according to, if you look at their numbers, their percentages, least. We are doctors, lawyers. We built these colleges, but that is our indigenous practice. And on the continent, we have the oldest universities, the oldest schools of learning, the oldest science exploration, the astronomy of medicine and all that. We had all of that. And so really what we're doing now is recovering what we lost during the enslavement. And this is who we are, and we need to make sure we continue to venerate our ancestors and teach our children to do that, so they will venerate us, so we will be there to help them through whatever they are going to go through. So anyway, happy Hoodoo Month from October 1st to October 31st. Celebrate your people. Amen. Ashe.
If you're talking, they will hear you.
We all want our kids to grow up safe and healthy, so we show them how. And we tell them with honest conversations that let them know what we expect. Not just one time, but every chance we get. That's especially important when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. Kids not only need to know the dangers and how to avoid them, they need to hear it often from you. And when it comes to pain medications, opioids, they need to know that they should never be taken without a prescription and never shared with friends or family. It's dangerous and illegal. So talk with your kids and guide them through the challenges of growing up safe and healthy. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
So talk, they hear you. You can do it if you try.
I'm a St. Sya student. Of course I walk into the sound of drums.
I'm a St. Sya student. Of course I know my mother.
I'm a St. Sya student. Of course I can play the drum.
I'm a St. Sya student. Of course I can work with my hands.
I'm a St. Sya student.